Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another LitReview, where I dumb down journal articles into my level. So we'll be continuing our journey through the biomechanical evaluation of first ray. The paper that we're gonna review is titled The Biomechanics of the First Ray, Part 4, The Effect of Selected Medial Column Arthrodeses, a three-dimensional kinematic analysis and cadaver model. So in the title, one of the new words that you will see is probably arthrodesis. And arthrodesis is a fancy word for fusion of the bone. So the paper is just looking at the title of the paper is just going to look at the medial column, which is this part right here, and how fusing the joints in the medial column and how that will affect the first ray. There hasn't been much study evaluating it, distinguishing clear contribution of each joint in the medial column. So this paper is trying to accomplish that. And this paper is authored by Dr. Rowling, Dr. Christensen, and Dr. Johnson. So what they did was they took 7 fresh frozen cadaver models, similar to other papers that were published before this, the part 1, 2, 3, and they essentially stabilized the whole using their own constructed device. They stabilized the rear foot, forefoot, and such, and they essentially put pressure on the first metatarsal right over here, and basically that is to emulate the pressure that is applied in the first metatarsal head when you're walking. Okay, and they're trying to emulate this via open kinetic chain, and that's something that we could talk about. So what they did was they put pressure on here and evaluated all the joints that are in the medial column and see how much they changed. Now, as a result, what they found out was the joint that contributes most to the first range of motion through that experiment was the navicular cuneiform joint, which contributed 50%, and the next one was the cuneiform first metatarsal joint, or first metatarsal cuneiform joint, which contributed 41% of the first range of motion, and lastly, small portion of it was contributed by talonavicular joint, about 9% of it. And that was just evaluating just a range of motion that was carried out by the joints in here to make first range of motion available. Now what they did was they fused joints one at a time and then saw if there's any changes that were noted. So the most decrease in movement after a joint fusion was when they fused the first metatarsal cuneiform joint and the right here, intercuneiform joint. So once they fused those two joints together at the same time, they saw the most significant decrease in the first range of motion. And ultimately, there has been other fusion of the other joints in the bone on the lower extremity here, also elicit a decrease in range of motion, but like I said, those two fusion ultimately result in the most significant. Other decrease in the range of motion was not significant, but the author still stated that any joint fusion kind of decreases the range of motion, which makes sense because you're basically limiting the range of motion available in the first ray. So what does that mean? What does this paper tell us? Yeah, so fusing the first metatarsal cuneiform joint and intercuneiform joint allows decreasing the first range of motion. And this is focused on correcting hypermobility in first ray. And I talked about hypermobility in other papers, but basically hypermobility first ray causes a lot of problem. And by fusing those joints in the first metatarsal cuneiform and the intercuneiform joint, you could potentially reduce the range of motion and potentially reduce the effect of hypermobility. So that's why a lot of the bunion procedure that can be caused by hypermobile first ray includes like Lapidus, which fuses the first metatarsal cuneiform joint. The author also noted that fusing of the intercuneiform joint is something what podiatrists should look at. Personally, I haven't seen much fusion of the intercuneiform joints, but the author, like I said, is noting that. So this paper was pretty simple. It just talks about how fusion of the bone allows you to basically limit the first range of motion, and which joints resulted in the most significant decrease in first range of motion is the first metatarsal cuneiform joint and the intercuneiform joint. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and check in for the last part of this biomechanics evaluation of first ray. And thanks for watching, and see you guys later.